It's me, DayLife Mary. This is the DayLife Mary show, brought to you by the Automat. And if you are watching this, you're coming from Instagram, so most likely you are one of the parasites or orbiters. And I say parasite because people who like to watch but not wash. And so this is your opportunity to come over the wall to the other side, closer to the pleasure matrix gates by becoming a washer. So as always, make a wash to cash.me/$washitall or paypal.me/washitall, or you can send me a DM for the Secret Faith links, aka crypto wallets. You can send me a bundle of cash in the mail if you would like the address. And for those of you who don't know, washing is how you transfer, aka sacrifice, your pain matrix belief out of the pain matrix into pleasure matrix expansion. So while your blood money is circulating within that system and its principles, you do not have access to your soul. Washing it is how you start the process of buying back soul access, becoming more human. And some of you don't want to do that. It's literally too painful. So, there's many paths. You choose the one you want. You were given God-given free will. So I had to abruptly end part 2 the other day of Love Lessons. So I am coming back to finish that up. And when I left off, I was talking about the term hungry ghost being one, being a mouse, the very beginning of being IRL when I was traveling with Wizenkoa and Jesus, and getting to know Jesus and admitting my feelings for him and having a grand old time together camping the Pacific Northwest. Now, being so close with somebody else in just literally physical proximity, with them 24/7, with no romantic attention but being friendly after admitting such, from my end, being vulnerable and admitting that was super uncomfortable for me, especially because I was talking about how when you do this, the pleasure matrix has a way of giving you the exact lessons or things that are where you don't want to grow and where it's uncomfortable for you. And I was someone who had giant fears of being vulnerable, first of all, but also never once in my life did I ever want to be someone who had admitted feelings for someone while having it just be out there and not requited or not like a thing, and having to even have the prospect of liking somebody else or expressing that if it wasn't a done deal that I was going to be with them or that they would like me back. So I was in this uncomfortable zone being IRL with him every day that was exacerbated because he was at that time having a long distance phone relationship. It was not IRL, with this 6'2" trans DJ ex-coke whore in California who was in the process of onboarding to come IRL, and everything the opposite of who me and my uptight ass was comfortable with. No matter how much I could admit to being cool and down in the pain matrix, being a fucking hipster artist and politically correct or whatever. That's one thing to say, and then there's your actual life and who you're interacting with and suffice to say, she wasn't even IRL and I was already uptight around her, and hearing them whispering to each other on the phone in a tent parked right next to his, I felt very like a cuck, basically. But I was like, it's fine, I don't care, to myself. I was like super in denial about my feelings at that point, more than the most, like to the nth degree. I still struggle with being in denial about my feelings now, but like way less so than when I had first come here. And so part of my bullshit was I couldn't even see that she was jealous of me. Just as I was intimidated of her being like this mixed trans SJW triple threat, I intimidated her as well, which I could not even wrap my head around. And she just compensated by being like confrontational or bitchy, but I was fake nice and mousy, like, which is even more dishonest, TBH, but it's like a quieter, sneakier way to be so. White women are sneaky. So part of this whole hungry ghost thing and being a mouse thing that part 2 is about, really, is that I was always afraid of being in any situations that would make me feel vulnerable and have my desires be on display to others. Admitting or showing my desires, like giving that info up, I was like, okay, like who's gonna come at me or come after me? I was incredibly afraid to do that shit. And it did make me a hungry ghost because everyone else was putting their shit on display, even if it made them look some kind of way or whatever. So that was a period of time I was really underplaying how much I was into Jesus, how much I liked him. That was just the beginning. It gets even worse in that regard as people come IRL more, as this timeline progresses. But I pretended I wasn't into him and was happy, though, from afar, secretly in my head, when I was viewing them having all of their problems. And karma's funny like that, because I'd be laughing, but it was shit ways that he did relationships with women that I would experience myself later on. And I know this is like kind of more about him right now, but it's part of my story to explain like where things went with us. This relationship showed some of those things that I know now that back then I did not know or admit or could see, blinded by other things, but he was like this narcissist that was into using everyone. He did it in the Pain Matrix, and he was in DayLife Army to reprogram, but half of that shit hadn't changed by then, and some of it still hasn't. But back then, it was bad, and I was a little out of it, didn't pay attention. But now I can like look back at this story and be like, okay, so he was a narcissist looking for his narcissistic supply, and as a generalization, trans girls have generally lower self-esteem and will put up with more bullshit for a quote-unquote like normie relationship with a man in the open that isn't a chaser. And it should be letting you watch Stacey May. I'm not sure why. This video will be posted if you want to watch it later, though. But yeah, so that is the background of like the type of person he was interested in for all these reasons of using somebody. And there's a lot of other reasons, opportunities to use this person particularly. But he could also, he liked being around people with low self-esteem. And he got clout from, in his still SJW addled brain, it was a relationship with a ton of clout, he was very much on display at that point, using a lot more of his satanic clout from his pain matrix life still in his work here in expending the pleasure matrix. And so I was viewing from afar or on the outside him like doing this relationship without really kind of openly understanding how he was using the relationship to feed his narcissism and using the person in that relationship. But through the future and me being someone who would experience that later on, I could tell you now these things that I was experiencing in a different light. And that is how that shit with Jesus and who he was seeing from afar at this point pertains to my love lessons, life lessons, whatever, because it relates to what he did with me. And this is a story about me and my love and all the things that I have learned in the past almost 2.5 years being here. But the first summer that was happening, and she and I had like a vague relationship. Like, we kind of talked, and we were the two people who were really washing the most. And so we had like this little competition vibe going on, which I also would deny and try to be fake about. And then she was from afar super jealous because I was IRL with Jesus, and then they were like the ones in a relationship, so I was jealous of them. And super intimidated because I was like, oh my god, a 6'2" trans DJ who's half black and Asian, how could I ever compete? Poor little old me. And so the rest of that summer together with Jesus, we had some cute moments. We ate some ice cream on the fucking river. We had some not cute moments, like me melting down after talking to my mom on the phone and freaking out and like lying to her and having her freak out, and him viewing me have a total fucking panic attack about it. And I saw him and was closer to him and saw moments of vulnerability and showed my own moments of vulnerability that in a way that I haven't seen others or been myself in literal relationships or with people I was sleeping with, which is to show just how crazy backwards things are in the pain matrix, that you do all of that super intimate, important, vulnerable stuff first before you even really know a person. And then that's like, it's just backwards, basically. But yeah, that was happening. We were in this kind of friendship phase, but like I've said before, it's not really a friendship. You're two cult members in a cult building a cult together. Like, it's a different type of relationship. They're closer than any of the pain matrix relationships you have, even if they're just your cohorts, your fellow soldiers, And he wouldn't admit that he was enjoying time being with like the nerd with zero clout. Like, in the pain matrix, white women are like, have a certain occupation or place that we occupy, and everyone occupies a different place in the pleasure matrix, which we are building. It's still expanding. When I say watch your belief, that's what I'm telling you to do. Take your belief out of the pain matrix and put it into pleasure matrix expansion. Get connected up to this spiritual arc of sorts. And Jesus tells me he adores you. Yes, Jesus and I have all sorts of ups and downs, and I'm sure he has said that to you. And thank you for coming around. It's great to meet you, Stacey May. Just for a little background, this is like the story of my time here through my lessons in love, and primarily a lot of that is my relationship with Jesus that has gone through all sorts of transformations. So the summer's winding down, and everyone is about to come IRL, and me, I'm terrified because I don't like people. I'm a fucking afraid of people, and I am about to have all kinds of people that I'm intimidated by be coming IRL. And that kind of concludes the hungry ghost, mousy part of the story, which, by the way, towards the end of that time, I was opening up. I had become a little bit comfortable enough with Wiz and Koa and Jesus to be more, open and vulnerable, and they were teaching me how to do that. I was coming in from the most fresh off the boat from the pain matrix, so I kind of got to a certain level, and as God is growth, and being here means signing up for constant growth, I was about to get my shit rocked, and as soon as I was comfortable, be thrown into another situation to challenge me and make me uncomfortable and, make me start to grow in other ways. So that was basically the beginning of fall and all of the other URL soldiers coming IRL. I went to, I think it was Vegas, to meet up with 2 of the other soldiers who were onboarding or were possibly going to onboard. And then from there, we changed configurations, and I stayed with this other girl that also loved Jesus, that was also like a trans SJW fashion, into all of these people that were really coming around, evident of his time and connection still to underground culture, DJ culture, trans nightlife, all these satanic spaces that were basically where he was in closest proximity to before coming IRL to DayLife Army. And Tom was there too, and then this other soldier was back in the configuration with Wika DJ, and I was back kind of from afar, like I had been URL, but I was just in a different portion or configuration of all of the soldiers. So that kind of concludes that portion or period of time, and the girl he was seeing was onboarding shortly after, and she and I were starting to talk more at this time, and I was still being fake to people. I was with this other girl who was talk about me not really understanding when someone else was just as intimidated, etc., as me in a different type of way. That was this girl. She still acts like that, fake hard to try and mask her feelings and not be vulnerable. But things were back on the focus of me and my own issues when I was staying at this house with other people. I didn't have time to be as boy crazy because I wasn't around Jesus, and I just had a lot of shit to face within myself. And it was, as usual, the perfect timing with how things work here that I was in that spot with those people, kind of dealing with my issues around women and still not being the mean kind of bitch that I was in my head a lot of the times, which would have been realer and more respected, because everyone can feel when you're like thinking something in your head or feeling a certain way and not externalizing it. And it drives people crazy to like feel that energy but not like have it match with how you're acting on the outside. So I was learning this in a more social setting around like different people than I had when I first came IRL with Lika and Jesus. And so that was like an important time for me to get better at doing that. But I got a little bit of the way, but I am like slow. And so I will go into later like how I would have done everything, but looking back, you know, you always are like, yeah, I could have done things differently in a place I wasn't at back then that I'm at now. But like I've said before, I'm always happy to look back and kind of cringe. Like it should be that I'm cringing when I look back at myself, because that means I'm constantly growing. So I'll go into this like the kind of love triangle dramas of everyone being together later on for part 3. And before I go, I would encourage everyone watching this now or watching this later to make a wash of belief. It is the best way to feel what it's like to be more connected to the pleasure matrix, to take your belief out of the inhuman ritual abuse death cult and tether your belief to something human, to something for growth, not entropy. And I have tons of live videos about washing if you want to look back at them and know more of what it's about. But the best way to know about it is to just do it and to see what happens as you begin to wash and have a washing relationship to this thing. And as you wash financially, you'll naturally begin to wash socially and with your time as well. It just is kind of like the progression of what happens when people continue to wash and decide to keep washing. So that's a bit advanced, or just what happens once you've done more of the first type financial washing. And yeah, as always, my DMs are open with any questions you may have about that. I think that's it for today. So have a great rest of your day, everybody, and I'll talk to you later.